Now, speaking of scheming, we've got the ultimate schemer, except scheming typically implies that you're successful at what you're doing. But Kathleen Kennedy is the controversial president of Lucasfilm. Well, we thought and we hoped that she was on her way out, but apparently we're all suckers, as she has just extended her contract and will be at Lucasfilm for reportedly 3 more years till 2024.
Interesting.
Why? Like, I don't dislike her nearly as much as some other people. Like, I get what she's going for, but at the same time, she has not been very good for the brand of Star Wars. Like, take the sequel trilogy out of the equation. Take that off the table. I know a lot of people have issues with that. It's cool if you do. Just take that out. Look at her firing of Josh Trank off the Boba Fett movie. Most recently, taking Patty Jenkins off the Rogue Squadron movie due to creative differences. The massive reshoots on Gareth Edwards' Rogue One. The basically firing of Lord Miller with 2 weeks left to go on Solo. She has fired more people than she's hired. Then look at what happened with the sequel trilogy. Even look at the stuff in the sequel trilogy that didn't happen. Colin Trevorrow was originally supposed to direct episode 9, then got fired off because they didn't like the Book of Henry. Like, she will hire big name directors and then not be on the same page creatively with them, or let them kind of just do their own thing. Now, from everything I was reading, the general consensus from people in the industry was that she would stay on to see the release of Indiana Jones 5 because she's been attached to every Indiana Jones movie since Raiders. Basically, she's worked with Spielberg. So she's a really good producer, and she's emotionally invested in Indiana Jones. Understandable. And I think, unfortunately, Indiana Jones, I think, is that franchise that gets forgotten about when it comes to Lucasfilm. Like, when people say Lucasfilm, they immediately think Star Wars, but Indiana Jones falls into Lucasfilm as well. So she was probably going to stay on for that and then maybe bow out. At least that's what we were hoping for. This doesn't make sense to me because, say what you will about the sequels trilogies, she has not done a good job of hiring the proper people in the proper positions. Yes, she is responsible for the highest grossing domestic box office movie of all time with The Force Awakens. That is the highest, like, just in America, movie of all time. Then The Last Jedi came out. We've talked about that extensively. That single-handedly fractured the franchise in half. And then Rise of Skywalker basically continued that crack down the line. Mando helped establish and rebuild some of that rapport, but there's been time and time again that we've been excited for a Star Wars project only to find the people leave the project due to scheduling conflicts, quote unquote scheduling conflicts, but more often than not creative differences, and then the project never sees the light of day. The only way I ever get excited for a Star Wars project is when it actually comes out, because there's no guarantee that it will even come out. Like, you could have a big name like Patty Jenkins, give her this really great vignette showing, yeah, she's doing this X-Wing movie. Nope, not anymore. The issue really does come with, she has a tendency to hire big name directors off of big projects just for the headlines, and then not be on the same page creatively with what you're looking for. Like, it's fine to get these directors, but at the same time, you yourself as a head of the company have to say, this is the type of movie that we're looking for. Who fits best into this, as opposed to, all right, here's a name, let's give him something. Like, I think she hired Gareth Edwards off of Godzilla, which was a pretty big success and pretty big deal, and I think Monsters, and then completely shut him out for the final third of the movie and completely reworked his movie because it didn't fit what they were kind of hoping for narratively. To me, the biggest mishiring that she's been responsible for was Lord Miller on Solo. I love Lord Miller. Lego Movie is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love both the Jump Street movies. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is great. But their style of directing and their style of humor does not mesh with the character of the world of Han Solo. You need to find things that fit. And from day one, I was like, this is a weird pairing that feels like just for the headline. So I genuinely do not understand why they're re-signing her, other than, okay, some of the projects made a lot of money. But even if you look at the movies that have come out, it's been a sharp decline. Like, Force Awakens made a lot of money. Now, granted, all the Star Wars trilogies make less and less money over time. Like, Phantom Menace is the highest grossing of the prequels. A New Hope is the highest grossing of the original movies. So you're going to lose it over time. But this just... it doesn't seem like a smart move. But then again, we'll talk about Bob Chapek, the head of Disney, later. He's not known for smart moves.
Nah. I go back and forth on this because there is definitely some more Star Wars stuff coming, but it does seem to be coming from the minds of Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, which is I'm totally okay with. And John still kind of has half a foot in the Marvel universe
Until he dies.
Yeah, well, So my thought process here, and the only way I can make this make sense into somewhat of a good idea, is give it, because you and I have theorized that John or Dave will step into the head of into this Lucasfilm position pretty soon, but I don't really like them being presidents, and I don't think that that's really a role that they would be down for. However, maybe this is not necessarily the fact that it's 3 years. I think is telling. The fact that they weren't like, hey, let's give her another 5 or 10-year contract. That I think is telling of like, hey, like we don't really have necessarily anybody else right now that's really ready for the role, so we're going to let you stay on, but it's going to be with a short leash. I think Dave, and at least on the Star Wars side of things, Dave and John are going to be creatively more in the director presidential seat, so to speak, than Kathleen will be. And maybe because I mean Dave was around, but John has some good clout, has a lot of his word pulls a lot in the movie industry. Who knows? Maybe there's some stuff going on behind the scenes that's very much like, all right, Kathleen, we got 3 more years to figure this out. Otherwise, we're going with somebody else.
Yeah, to me, with her, maybe it's just how I'm viewing things. People in leadership, you should know the name, but the name shouldn't come up a whole lot. Look at the head of Disney Films up until the end of this year, Alan Horn. You don't know the name because he keeps himself out of the spotlight. Like, If I'm hearing your name a lot, it's probably not a good thing. Like, we're going to talk about Bob Chapek here in a little bit. We hear his name a lot, but it's not a good thing that we're hearing his name a lot. Like, we hear Kathleen Kennedy's name a lot, but that's probably not a good thing that we're hearing her name a lot.
Absolutely.
Like, it's one of the... being the president of a company or the head of a studio type of thing it's one of those things that people should be aware of who you are, but we shouldn't be hearing your name a lot. It should be a position that you are more or less the enabler for other people to go and do. Not so much you need to be the one that's got the spotlight on you at all times. I think it's one of those thankless positions that really needs to be in existence. You need the quarterback, basically, but you don't necessarily want someone that's gonna be as controversial or be a lightning rod for controversy, so to speak. You want them to be there for you as a creative, but you don't want them to more or less take the shine off the actual creatives, and unfortunately that's been the case for most of her tenure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm hoping that it is like, hey, we're giving you a last chance. That's why it's going to be 3 years. To my I'd have to do some more, in-depth research, but there's nothing big that hasn't already been announced outside of the the couple trilogies that have not been labeled. But like, yeah, maybe it is like, hey, listen to your people. You have 3 years to figure it out, and I'm hoping that's what it is.